My biggest takeaway from the NBA Finals is that I believe that the Celtics have unlocked the key, at least the first step to revolutionizing how teams are created now.
Going back to Kid though, do you have any doubt as far as like a heliocentric offense being a winning formula for a championship winning team? Because obviously there's been so many cases of heliocentric offenses being successful in the league. Obviously the Suns, James Harden's Rockets, even the Mavs, they just made it to the finals. But in terms of winning it all, is it like once you get to the final round or some of these final rounds when you're going up against more talented teams that can like take away the advantages that you would have with a heliocentric offense? Do you think at the end of the day there's just too many like cons with heliocentricism? Or
I'm willing to go on record to say if Luka was 100%, they could have won that series.
Damn.
Now, here's the only problem, because here's the thing. KP doing what he did for only those few games, and even now he was injured and out for the other ones, but there was one surprise, which is what had me picking the Mavericks. The other one was Kyrie Irving turning into the worst player on the floor. I couldn't see that, and I don't know exactly what happened there because, okay, he takes tough shots, but he was making tough shots against everybody before that. Like that's not a weird thing for him. For him to completely lose that edge or whatever he had like that, I mean, if he had played even average in game 2, like they win that game, they should win that game, right? And like 1-1 changes the complexion of the series. So yes, I think for sure that whatever Dallas is doing with Luka for sure could win a title at some point. Because remember, the other key they did though was they surrounded him with really good defenders. So Gafford, Jones Jr., Washington, who am I missing? Green coming off the bench. That was important too, to find those 3-and-D kind of guys. So all of that mixed together, yes, to me was on the right track. And I think they could definitely do that at least with what Dallas is doing. Is there any other example right now of Helio?
In terms of in the NBA?
Yeah. Anybody else now doing it? Because Harden is not doing it anymore.
Knicks as a heliocentric?
Oh, yeah. Gosh.
Different.
But that might be due to this. That might be due to injury, though. That might be not the fairest of judges.
Denver?
Okay, right.
Not Denver. Phoenix.
Well, but they got the 3, and so they're never quite like what we're seeing in Dallas, right? Heliocentric almost has to be like there's a minimum usage percentage they have to have before you can really.
OKC?
OKC could be closest, right? And that's kind of the reason why like Giddey couldn't really function really well with them because he needed the ball too to be able to do some nice passes and stuff like that. But I think you could probably do it if you were able to have a really, really imposing defense, right? That's the whole key in my mind. If you can really like cause problems, shut guys down defensively, then yes, the offense could work for sure.
Yeah, no, I feel it. My biggest concern is just before Damo goes, my bad. It's just the lack of a balanced attack with a heliocentric offense.
And by the way,
a little bit too predictable.
And as a coach, you're right. Like I would hate to see that, right? I love to see the ball movement and player movement and cutting and all that stuff. I just did a video on how Mikal Bridges is going to fit in, which by the way, also connects to the conversation about coaching because most coaches, I think, will tell you now in the NBA, they don't have practices. They don't have time to have 2-hour practices on an off day where they're running up and down and drills and all that stuff. So, you need the reason why the Knicks are going to have a big advantage now is they're bringing in another guy that's completely familiar with the other 3. And you probably don't need a lot of reps in practice to get them on the same page. And so that's going to be a big advantage, I think, for the Knicks going forward. So the Celtics are going to have their hands full, I think, going forward. The only thing is if Hartenstein doesn't return, which I don't think he will, that's going to be a one. That's too bad. He is one of those X factors, I think, for the Knicks. And if they could figure out how to keep him, I had an idea by the way. So I believe because they only signed into a 2-year contract, they only have his limited bird rights and not his full bird rights. So they can only offer him, I think it was like $16.5 million per year. And he's probably going to get an offer of 20, 21. And he's got to take it. Like if he doesn't take it, his agent should fire him. So why couldn't they do something where they're like, okay, we'll pay you 16.5, but we're going to find you $5 million of endorsements that will make up the difference. And they find those that maybe they even pay for them, in a laundered money kind of way. Why couldn't they do that? In the land of NIL and everything that's going on.
It makes sense. They need to, because I think that they have like the biggest, best shot. They sold out to get Mikal. They sold out to get OG. They really put the farm on the table and gave everybody everything. They have to figure out a way to bring it back. They would probably be one of the more the bigger questionable modern day teams as to like what if they were healthy versus the Celtics and
well, By the way, they need to trade Randall, right?
Yeah,
Randall needs to go, and that's
Absolutely.
a huge contract that gets off their books. But again, because of these limited bird rights, it doesn't mean they can offer that extra money to Hartenstein, which really is like it sucks. All they had to do was offer him a 3-year contract. That's the dumb thing about all of that, right? He was so cheap, nobody was going to sign him. They could have signed him for whatever they wanted to, and they could have given him a 3-year deal. They should have done that, and that would have eliminated. He'd still be on contract for more and more year. Like it seems silly. So that was the small sided part of it, because like, would it really have killed them to go into this next year? They would have been paying him whatever he's paying, like $10 million a year this year, whatever it was, and it would be nothing for a starter on a good team. It'd be insane. They'd have a great deal. So that's also on them. And they're not going to be able to replace him. Now you put Mitchell Robinson in the lineup, and it changes everything, because he's not the offensive person that Hartenstein is, unfortunately. And so, they're good, and he on the defensive end he's good, but you need great on both ends.
I was going to ask another Mavericks question. Soza brought up the offense, them being heliocentric as probably a issue for them going forward. I was going to say defensively, you did bring up that they surrounded Luka with better defenders, but you couldn't tell watching that finals with that what to me look like defensive schemes and adjustments. I could not get away from the fact that every time I looked on the court, the corners is wide open for the Celtics. They were a pass away from an open corner 3 from anybody. Deli shooter, Xavier Tillman, whatever it was. Was I just noticing something dumb? Was that like a coaching scheme or something that should have been changed? Is it a pick your poison with how the Celtics are doing their offense because they run a 5-out?
One thing is, and I'm doing this video as well in the middle of trying to get that done with everything else, but the Celtics are kind of changing the way the game is going to be played going forward with 5 elite 3-point shooters on the floor, right? That changes a lot of different things in terms of spacing and how you have to defend it. What I liked that the Mavericks were doing was for Kyrie, they were keeping him out of guarding anybody in the corners. Okay. So whenever his man would go to the corner, he would just stay up on the wing, and then the big man would be the guy guarding the corner. So, and primarily because normally if he's on the weak side and there's penetration, it's that position that has to come over and rotate. And if it's a guard, then it doesn't help you. And Kyrie ain't going to help you really. Maybe he'll get a steal once every 3 games. So it makes sense to have the center there. But that means that Kyrie's going to be the guy who has to X out to the corner if it gets kicked out to that far. Now, they got away with it a little bit because I don't think the Celtics did a great job of skipping to the corners when you saw those openings, right? But what they did have a problem with is when you're helping from on the strong side. So if the ball is on your side and you're guarding the corner, and then it comes and you help off there, it's an easy pass a high schooler can make and an easy shot a high schooler can make, right? And that's what we try to do, never do that. Now, the Tillman 3 that he did get, I don't think Tillman had shot a 3 in a month or two. So I get it. Like, let him shoot it, steer him, and he made it. Mm-hmm. But then we saw it happen against off of Jaylen Brown or somebody, and I think that was Kyrie too. So there's a lack of discipline defensively that they didn't have. I know that awful coaching who came on the show. Do you know that guy who screams and yells? He has a lot of misguided takes on defense, but he was pointing out some stuff too where it just looked like they weren't drilling this stuff, and maybe they weren't. I don't know, but Kyrie let him down on that end as well, and so that's an interesting question because if he's going to be in a fog on both ends of the floor, then you have a problem. You have to limit his minutes, you know what I mean, and then that means Luka's got to play more. So, and plus they didn't do a good job of protecting Luka. So just like Horford was being protected a lot of the time, and KP as well for not having to get up in that pick and roll, they weren't doing the same thing with Luka. And so he was getting caught out there on an island, guarding a ball handler coming around a ball screen. And you could just tell, I mean, he's not a great defender a lot of times, but there are moments when he can move. And there were times he just wouldn't, I don't know. I think he was hurt. His knee was bleeding. He's draining his knee every game. Yeah. So I think that was a big factor too. That would have been a little different if he was, 80, 90%.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't as bad as he showed in the finals. His foot looked like it was almost nailed to the ground on a lot of these possessions. Kind of rounding it out with these last couple of questions. So you actually brought up my biggest takeaway from the NBA finals is that I believe that the Celtics have unlocked the key, at least the first step to revolutionizing how teams are created now. I don't know if you've looked. I'm an Atlanta fan. Have you looked at Ricochet's film at all yet?
A complete revelation to me. I hadn't even realized he was on the board, much less going to get drafted. So you tell me. I'm derelict in my duty. What is he? What kind of player is he?
No. Yeah, I think what a lot of us thought is that we saw what happened with Luka and Derek Lively last year, right? He was, I mean, just the thing that they needed, a breath of fresh air, a lob threat just for him. And pairing a SAR with a Trey was supposed to be, that was supposed to be 2.0 right there. That's the next one that's going to get it done. Ricochet for me wasn't even on my board, like you said. He wasn't in my scope either. He is at best Harrison Barnes. I don't want to be, and look at you. Harrison Barnes at 1 is kind of crazy. He supposedly has some ability to put it on the floor, but he's a weaker guy. The handle isn't like the best. He can shoot it. I mean, he can shoot it. And then also he's from the
Oh, okay.
He's a below the break shooter. Let's just say that.
He can shoot the basketball.
PJ Washington shooter.
And then also they're projecting that the defensive upside, especially because of the length, is going to be there. Now, again, not even close to NBA strength. Like, very, but he's a 19-year-old kid or whatever the case may be. But with that being said, with the limited knowledge that you may have on Ricochet, do you think that the Hawks went in that direction because, like we were talking about, the future of what NBA basketball is, a Trae Young who can drive, shoot, pass, DeJounte Murray who can drive, shoot, pass, Jalen Johnson, Ricochet, and then you just have to find that 5 that kind of just works?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the guy that should be drafted number 1 in every draft should be Kevin Durant. Like, that is who you're trying to get, in my mind. A guy who's long, he can guard, he can play defense, he can shoot threes, and maybe put the ball on the ground. I would just take the shooting at this point. If you're a shooter and you can play defense and you got length, that's all you want.